What's up, guys? I'm back with another card. This one is write about the best job you've ever had. Well, I'm not going to write about it, but I will talk about it. I have to go all the way back to being a kid to tell you why this was the best job ever. Like a lot of kids, grew up watching cartoons, all kinds, right? And I was obsessed with a voice actor named Mel Blanc. For any of you that know anything about cartoons, voiceover, or anything else like that, he is the legend, he is the man, he is the de facto standard that everyone tries to measure up to, and I don't believe very many will ever be able to get close to. Now, the whole thing for this was that I had an obsession with that, but mainly voices and mimicry and sounds and just different things like that. That was just amazing to me that somebody could do that. And I didn't know, at that time, I didn't know who he was. The only person I did know that did a voice that I really liked a lot, well, really there was a myriad number of them, but I used to love listening to AM radio and then eventually FM radio, Wolfman Jack. And he's got that kind of voice where, you know, whenever he's talking about music and talking about radio and all this other sort of thing like that, you know, he has this weird kind of almost squanched kind of voice that drew me in. But my favorite, absolute favorite, was Casey Kasem. And I remember every single time he'd come on, you know, he'd be on the radio and be like, "This is Casey Kasem with America's Top 40 Countdown." And I was just mesmerized by that. That sort of thing just blew my mind, that there were people on the radio, that was their job, was to talk, was to entertain, was to get this kind of just vivid energy out there. Fast forward a few years, and I end up working full-time at Hallmark. And how I managed to pull that off, that's a whole nother story. But the opportunity arose to get in there, and I hadn't been working for very long, and a coworker of mine had mentioned that they were holding internal auditions for voice acting. And I was kind of astounded. I had never really thought, well, wait, like for real voice acting, like stand in a booth, do the kind of things that I'd seen like in behind the scenes stuff on movies and like the occasional HBO special where they were talking about how movies and cartoons were done. So I didn't hesitate. I signed up for it, and I remember my first actual memory is getting there about 30 minutes early. There's this long table, and it's got a couple of people kind of filing in, and I wanted to sit with my back to a corner. That's just a weird habit of mine, but something that I wanted to do. I just, so that way I can kind of take in what everyone's doing, what everyone's, you know, looking like, who they're looking at, all these sort of things. And the layout of the room was that it was a long table with chairs along one side of the wall, and then two doors, and then there was a microphone on one side, and I got really nervous at that point. Like, oh God, we're going to have to audition in front of everyone. I didn't know how that really worked at that point in time. And so there was a little bit of a talk where the voiceover director at that time at Hallmark, she took the time to go ahead and, you know, introduce herself and the other people that worked in the sound studio. And there was, like I said, that microphone there. And she asked if anyone wanted to give it a shot, go up there and do some voices. And they talked a little bit about the craft of voice acting, and you know, again, had really cemented the fact that this is an acting factor and not just getting up there and making crazy noises and voices and sound effects. So after that, everyone got an email invite to various auditions. I'm not gonna lie, I was completely just a bundle of nerves. I couldn't wait for that day to happen. I think, and I still have the email printed out somewhere, I think I had gone to that meeting on a Tuesday, and by that Friday I had my audition slot for the next week. So when I went in, I didn't know if there would be any copy to read from. I didn't know anything really. I remember I was really excited, and I was full of energy, and I was just bouncing off the walls. And very few things in life truly freak me out, but the moment I walked in there, there was a few people in there, maybe 3 or 4 people total. I don't know if one of the other ones was a voice actor, and I have no idea that, you know. And so I remember that it was just a blur. And I get in there, and as soon as I get in there, there's this little walled off, it looks like an examination room, or like the kind of room that they put crazy people in, and then they just, you know, they lock you in there and they study you through a little window for a while. The window was quite a bit bigger than that, but right in front of it was the mixing station where they would do all the recording and everything and talk back and forth to you. So I got in there, And I put the headphones on, and there's this microphone in front of me, and I knew enough to know that that was a very expensive microphone. So I was really reluctant to get too close to it, which is really bad form, is what I ended up finding out, because that's a lot of, you stand too far back or too far forward, you can really mess that up. So then the next thing that happens is they tell me, okay, go ahead and go crazy. Try, just do some voices. So I don't recall that there was any actual copy to read from in the booth. So I ended up doing like, at that point I'd always kind of made funny voices and things, but I kept telling myself, I was like, okay, just stick to something that makes sense, to things that come to you naturally. So of course I tried some different things. I did like some various accents, I did some impersonations, albeit none of them were very good, at least not, and here's why I can say that. And no, I'm not going to play this, but I do have my original audition audio. One of the engineers, who I became really good friends with later, he was kind enough to give it to me sometime later, and I've held on to that because that was the very first time I got recorded professionally, and it is horrible. Not the audio quality. I sound amazing and like an idiot at the same time. It's rather compelling, and no, I will not play it on here. So moving forward with that, I remember it was just a blaze of like rapid fire. It was like I think after it was done, I wondered if I had gone too far. I mean, that was, I probably did. And I remember coming home, and then later when I was kind of going through Netflix, thinking, what is this? And I had voiceover in my head. So now I'm looking up, things on YouTube and all this other stuff. But there just so happened to be this documentary that was done called I Know That Voice, and it was created by John DiMaggio. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's the voice of Bender. He also does, and I don't watch Adventure Time, so I don't know the name of the character. It'll probably come to me later, but he portrays the dog in there. Jake the dog. There we go. Thank God for internet memes. And so he does the voice for that character and myriad numbers of other characters as well too. So he did this great documentary, and it has people in there from legendary voice directors like Andrea Romano to Tara Strong, to John himself in there being interviewed, and it just couldn't have been better timing to have seen something like this at the exact same time that I'm taking my first real steps into voice acting. And I was completely like in the zone at that point. Like I felt, the thing was that after that first audition, I was on this incredible high. I was like just on cloud nine, and things were going really great, and I was feeling really good about this. And I think that's when that's right about the time that the first little creeping aspects of egotism started to come in. I know that over the time that I had auditioned and done different things there in that professional scope, there was quite a few roles that I didn't end up getting. And there was one of them that, because of the way that I would there was some noise I made. I think I was messing around and kind of doing like what I thought a baby Chewbacca would sound like or something like that. And my voice is not very warmed up. But when I was in the microphone booth, I don't remember the voice director that was in there, but I started kind of like, they were asking for me to kind of do noises for a dragon. And when I was in there, I was like, and that was just to get like, my vocal cords warmed up. And I should have done that beforehand. But she was like, wait, can you do that again? And I did. And she was like, can you play with this? And then I don't know if an idea was hashed from there or not, but what ended up happening was that this whole thing came about because there was an internal project that they were working on called North Pole 1820. And so a role had come up where there was a character named Charlie the Yeti. And I didn't know much about him, but I'm not going to lie, it was kind of love at first sight. As a kid, I used to love reading books on cryptozoology, so things like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Nessie, all that sort of stuff, huge in my mind, huge in my heart. But if anything, for the folklore aspect of it, just the craziness and the imagination that comes along with the creatures like that and what they must sound like and look like and act like. So this was a friendly Yeti, and he occupied the North Pole area, this magical city up in the North Pole. You know, the whole thing with Santa Claus. Well, there was a motion to move forward with him, and they needed somebody to be able to provide his voice. Now, I'm not going to kid you, that was probably the high point of this. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm working, like I said, full-time at Hallmark, but if I had ever thought that I would be able to, you know, do better than getting a job at Hallmark and have that be a component where I'm doing voiceover, I would have laughed at anyone that would have suggested that. And I couldn't believe I was doing it. And so I don't want to make it seem like it was all easy and I was automatically getting, you know, to do all these roles. I wasn't. In fact, one of the fears I had was that I wasn't going to get this role as Charlie the Yeti, because they had actually hired another voice actor to do the animated project for it. And I didn't know that. He was an external guy. And when I came along, the voice director really liked the weird work that I did, because Charlie does some speaking, but he doesn't. He also has a lot of other just kind of like weird guttural kind of grunting. But I had wanted, my take on it was merging it a little bit more with what I thought a much more childlike Chewbacca would have been. But I digress. The point is that I ended up getting that role, and that was after a lot of other really wild situations that I was in where I got, you know, a little too overconfident, and I kind of phoned it in on some other performances. But I was really happy I landed that one, because it ended up being turned into some, you know, toys, cards, ornaments, different things like that, a lot of which I have right here in my collection. And as you can see here, these are the products. Some of these are prototypes, some of these are other things that, you know, I was given and that I managed to get a hold of, and, you know, that some of these made it into retail. And, you know, this is probably my prize here because of this.
Yes, good. Yes, good.
In a toy stuffed plush doll. It's the craziest thing ever. I definitely want to tell you guys about this part. So there was one particular time where, even though this was the best job I could have possibly had, there was one particular audition I went to, and it was so screwed up, I don't even remember what it was. I do remember that I ended up writing it down in my journal because it was so messed up, and I couldn't find my journal in time to do this. But here's the thing. So in this audition, somehow I'd gotten sick, and I don't know if I had a case from the nerves from my job or what was going on, you know, my normal Hallmark stuff where I was doing design. I don't know if it was from that or what it was, but I wasn't doing well at all. Very sick, very much like I couldn't keep my lunch down. But I had an audition, and I didn't want to bypass it. Now, one of the things I can remember is this. One of my personal heroes is Steve Blum. Now, if you don't know Steve Blum, he's, you know, he's done a lot of voice acting. He's been around for a long time, especially in the anime world. He's known for Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop, and he's always somebody I'd looked up to. And there's a web series that still is going on called VO Buzz Weekly. So if you have interest in any kind of voiceover stuff, please go check that out. It's on YouTube. And he was interviewed on there, and they asked him what one of the things was, you know, if he could give any advice to young aspiring voice actors. Well, in there's a quote where he says,
"The audition is the job." Yeah,
and that stuck with me. I was never able to walk away from that. That to this day, I carry a piece of paper in my wallet that I have where, you know, I look at that and I remember that before I do any kind of voiceover that I do. It doesn't matter what it is. And I carried that with me into all of the booth sessions and everything that I did at Hallmark. And it was one of the few things that got me through this really bizarre moment where I was not feeling great and I wanted this role. And I thought, you know, I could probably email them and say, hey, look, can we please switch this up? Can we go to another day? Can we do something where I'm not feeling it? And then I thought, no, suck it up. Do this. Just go in there and, you know, this is your litmus test. Let's see if we can try and get through this. Sure enough, I go up there, and you know, I ended up like going to the restroom that was like down the hall from the studio, and the studio in Hallmark is located on one of the top floors. I ended up going into the restroom, just sitting in there and breathing, just breathing to calm myself, center myself, whatever kind of crazy stuff I could do to just get myself calmed down. And that was 15 minutes early before I had to go into the audition, you know, to do the audition. I get in there, and for some reason, the room was unusually warm. It may have just been me on fire. I don't know, burning, you know, not in a good way. And there was a bunch of other people, a couple voice directors, just, and I was like, oh, I'm not anticipating this. I thought it was just going to be, somebody just doing, the sound engineering. So I sucked it up and I got in there. Somehow that recording session was 30 to 35 minutes long, something like that, which is not a long session. But considering the fact that everything in my stomach was moving like a, it was horrible. I don't even want to say it was butterflies. It was like pterodactyls in there. It was ridiculous. And I managed to keep a smile on my face, and I like on point, kind of like a ballerina, like kind of just like serious. And I got through it, and I was like very, I was like, thank you for, the pointers and all this other stuff. I think I did okay. They, the feedback was that I did a good job on it. I did decent. But I knew that I didn't get the role. I knew that walking out of there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to head back to my desk. And then I thought, no, I'm not. And I kind of broke my own personal protocol, and I went straight home. Driving home, everything seemed okay. Breathing. And got in the door, and something must have happened in my brain that took all this coalescence of just stress and anger and frustration at my other elements in my job and completely crash landed with this weird euphoric state that I had of having gone into the sound booth and done the best that I could. And everything just came out. Literally. It was horrifying. And I remember that it felt like I had just like expulsed myself of venom or something. It was just horrible. I mean, like, it was like action figure spray action bad. And so that was probably one of the worst times out of this best job that I've ever had. But all in all, I can't complain. I really can't. I mean, I was terrified in there. There was a lot of things about it about doing voiceover for Hallmark that scared me, but in good ways. And I had the best. I worked with really good people that helped me learn how to work with a microphone, how to do things, how to have a stage presence. And that ended up, translating into when I went and did shows, because I'm a fairly introverted person. Doesn't really seem like it, and what introvert has a YouTube channel? But it's true. And so I ended up going and taking what I learned from there, and I'm able to do public speaking and all these other things because of that. So some time goes by, and one of the good things that came out of, like, just being able to go through all this was that I really appreciated when I got a chance to meet one of my personal idols, Mr. Steve Bloom. And this is us together at NakaCon. And I'm not kidding. I didn't think I'd have a chance to meet him because I couldn't leave my table. For any of you guys that work art conventions, you can't leave your table. I'm actually, in this photo, I'm standing about 25, 30 feet away from my table. I didn't even care if I came back and it had been cleaned up. I do care. I'm not lying. But, at that point in time, like, I saw him walk by and I was like, I'm never going to get a chance to talk to this guy. I'm never going to meet him again. Here's my chance to do a one-on-one thing. And I damn near, like fell over as I jumped on the chair to clear the little side wall to run after him. I must have looked like a complete maniac chasing after him. But the point is, I got a chance to meet him, and tell him. And one of the things I was really grateful was, I'm also a really big fan of Keanu Reeves, and a lot of people give Keanu Reeves a lot of flack, and I'm not really sure why. I've always been a fan of his work. I loved him as Neo in The Matrix. That was when I really became a fan of him. But I'd loved him in Point Break and a lot of other stuff like that as well too. And so, but I had a really great little conversation with him, and I got a chance to tell him and show him the little paper that was in my wallet of that quote that he had and what it meant to me. So that's one of the reasons why that was the best job ever. I mean, I got a chance to fulfill, a dream from childhood where I got to do voiceover for an animated character, and not directly, but like the toys and everything else that came from there. And I feel that if it had gone on, I would have had more of a chance to do that. But that was one of those internal properties that just didn't go anywhere. After the first year or so, they kind of shuttered it down, and it went on, its merry way, as some things do. There are projects that just never go into fruition any further. But to this day, I'm still doing voiceover for clients here and there. And, you know, my primary drive is art, but voiceover and acting in general is one of my all-time passions. And it's the reason why I ended up building, you know, a small custom kind of setup behind me. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening to this story about the best job I've ever had. And in case you're wondering, no, I don't do voiceover for Hallmark anymore. If you caught on before, I do contractual work for them, so it's not an option that I do there anymore. But it was definitely one of the highlights I've had in my life, and I will be ever grateful that I got my start there at Hallmark doing voiceover. It is no kidding when they say that the road into doing voiceover is different for everyone. I've heard that from myriad voice actors over the years, and some people have had some stranger paths than I did getting into it. And if I have anything I can say on this, you know, it would be, if voiceover or anything like that, whatever your dream job is, give it a shot. If the opportunity comes up, run with it. Give it a shot. You may never get another chance at it. And honestly, I may never get big roles again, but it doesn't mean that I won't keep on trying. So, if you feel like it, leave it down there in the comments what your best job was that you ever had. I'd certainly like to know what that was, and even if you feel adventurous, maybe leave a video reply. I heard that's kind of all the rage with the kids these days. So, thanks again for watching, and certainly if you liked what you saw, click and subscribe. You know what, I think I'm going to just turn that into text down here at the bottom at some point in these future videos, because I really feel like a cheap car salesman. I say it all the time, don't I? But I do, like, click and subscribe, click and subscribe. I shouldn't have to remind people to do that. I mean, even 12-year-olds that are watching any of these videos will probably do that anyway. At least I hope they will. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.